Get started. All right, everybody, this is Sheets. And as I promised, I have a very, very special guest today. I have Bobby with me as well. But I have Al McMordie on. And without getting too much into history, I know him for quite a while. And, you know, in the name of transparency, which is, you guys know, is kind of what drives this whole site. I just want to tell you my view on sports betting in general. As you guys know, I don't really do a lot of sports betting. I feel it's extremely difficult to win at sports betting, and I'm that guy. I'm the guy that doesn't really get the same entertainment out of it as people get. You know, if I don't feel I have an edge, so I really don't feel. You know, I don't really spend the time that I feel needed to gain an edge, which is hard enough as it is. But I'm just going to put it to you this way. If somebody came to me and says, Eric, you need to make a sports bet tomorrow, and, you know, if you lost it, XYZ would happen. In other words, like, you have to make a sports bet tomorrow and it's got to be a winner. I swear to you guys, there's literally one human being on the face of the earth that I would call for advice on that pick. And he's the person involved in this chat right now. This is Al. He has an extremely long history of not only, you know, betting on sports, giving out, you know, selling sports picks or whatever, but he treats it extremely seriously. And you know, whenever you try to joke and try to joke about it, you know, listen, this is his livelihood. He's been doing this for a long, long time, and he's literally the only person that I would blindly call and say, Al, I need something. Who is it going to be? You know, and when you guys always ask me, you know, what am I doing? How am I making selections? Whatever it is, I will say, be totally transparent. Like, I don't really bet sports, but I will say this: I know a lot of you do. And if I were going to bet sports, this would literally be the first phone call I would make, is to at least get advice from him and things of that nature. I didn't know how much you wanted me to get into, you know, how I know you or whatever, because I know you like to keep all that kind of separate. That's fine. So I'm just going to leave it to, I'm going to say, Al, how did you get involved in sports betting and the sports industry and things like that? Tell me a little bit about your history. Go over a little bit about your accolades, and then I'll ask questions along the way.
Well, it's crazy how this all kind of happened. You know, I mean, initially it goes back to when I was a kid. When I was 12 years old, 11 years old, my father was gambling, and, you know, he had all the tip sheets from the Gold Sheet and whatnot, and the Sports Reporter, and that's how I got introduced to this whole thing called sports gambling and handicapping. And I got started real young. I actually began, you know, thinking about handicapping, and, you know, as we would think about it, Eric, I actually got thinking about it when I was 12, 13 years old. I began keeping statistics when I was 14, and I would track line movements from the Stardust, open and closing line at that young age. I mean, that's how long back it goes. So I've been handicapping, you know, really since 1980. And I did it all throughout high school. I think there was a reference to it even in my high school yearbook. You know, I went to college, I did it. And then I went to law school. And I was practicing, and after graduating law school, I went to the University of Michigan. After graduating, I was working down in Dallas, and as a first-year corporate attorney. One of the guys who was opposite a deal I was working on was the brother of Pork Chop, who was a Grapevine, Texas, if you remember Pork Chop, a Grapevine, Texas handicapper. And Pork Chop was connected with Steve Turner of Texas Sports Wire. And Pork Chop's brother was known as the Texas Bounty Hunter. His name was Ben Flynn, another handicapper. And so I began leaving voicemail messages for Pork Chop. This is back in 1992 or 91, actually, at the end of 1991. And I would leave him some voicemail messages, and I would say, you know, you're wrong. You know, the Detroit Lions are going to beat the Dallas Cowboys in the wild card game, you know, stuff like that. And I left about 6 messages for him over a few weeks in that December and January of 1991 and the start of 1992, and all 6 plays won, which, as you know, is ridiculously difficult. It's crazy. That stuff just doesn't happen. He then began, he didn't know who I was, but he began promoting on his comp line. There's this guy, I'm going to call him the Phantom, and we're going to have this Beat the Phantom contest because this guy's the best handicapper I've ever seen. And of course, he's making these ridiculous statements after a sample size of 6. you know. But he then has these 2 weekly contests in 2 consecutive Saturdays in college basketball, where any of his customers who could outdo me in college basketball with 15 picks would get a free week of pork chop service. So one Saturday I went 11-4. The next Saturday I go 12-3. And maybe, you know, out of the 40 or 50 people who called in to participate, maybe 4 or 5 guys would beat me, and those 4 or 5 guys would get free picks for, you know, pork chop. I mean, he was just this consummate marketer who's really good. And so at that point, he said, I want to hire you. He said, you know, again, sample size of 56, right? It's just, or whatever it was, it's, you know, 36 plays. Was it, you know, kind of crazy. Anyway, so he said, I'm going to give you a 900 line. And I basically said, no, I'm practicing law. I don't want to do this. And he cajoled me for about a month. And eventually I just caved. And I said, fine, you know, go give me a 900 line. So we split the profits for about 6 months. And then after about 6 months, and, you know, it wasn't a lot of money. Yeah, just in the you know, $3,000, $5,000 range. You know, he was making money, but I was just making, you know, peanuts. And we were charged about $15 a pick. But anyway, even though it was peanuts, it was still enough money where I wanted it to be mine. I didn't want it to be his. So after 6 months, I broke off and I formed, you know, Big Al Sports Line. And, you know, basically, again, you know, I was practicing law, you know, I was a corporate attorney, and this wasn't a, you know, full-fledged business at that point. It was just a hobby. But I did it from 1991 through about 1995. And then eventually in 1995, for various reasons, the business exploded. I had started to advertise in various media like New York Daily News, New York Post, Chicago Sun-Times, USA Today. And it, you know, it's like any other business, you know, you have to treat it like a business. And then it grew, and, you know, I quit practicing law in 1995. So that's kind of the long story on how this business started. It was very, yeah, just crazy.
You know, it's funny for those of you, I mean, we'll refer to this a couple of different times. If you go to his website, which is bigal.com, I mean, I actually didn't even click through some of this. I mean, I'm just reading some of the accolades and all the stuff that you've been through, like all these years. And I always wondered, you know, when you know, like you said, there's all these different handicappers out there, and they all say that they win. They're all whatever, because they want business or whatever it is. But there are some independent, like, contests and independent tracking services. At least there used to be, right?
And there still are.
Okay. So what was your experience dealing with them? Did you feel as though it was important to get, you know, to get like a track record to you know, that type of thing?
Yeah, you know, back in the day, there were, you know, people thought there were 2 types of handicappers, right? There were honest handicappers who got their plays monitored by Jack Stewart of Sports Watch or Ruth Glasgow of the Oklahoma City Sports Monitor. And then there were what people would call dishonest handicappers who didn't. And there was this big divide between the two. And I got my plays monitored. Other, you know, handicappers that you may have heard of, you know, also got their plays monitored, like Mark Lawrence, et cetera. You know, we would compete for ranking, and it was very valuable back then, extremely valuable to be number 1 in a sport. I remember, you know, Tom Stryker, you know, he sells at my site, bigal.com. He was number 1 in the NFL 2 consecutive years. And I think it was maybe 1999 and 2000. You know, it was a very big deal. So we would do that. Eventually with the internet though, you know, it's kind of counterintuitive, but with the internet, these ranking services have kind of become even less important. I think they've been maybe crowded out a bit by the noise. Everyone says they win. You know, you could go on Twitter and no one's ever lost. And there's also a way, you know, there's a lot of, shall we say, crookedness in the business as well.
Sure.
Where people will create a bunch of different services and they will give out, you know, literally, you know, have 20 different services and give out 5 picks for each service, and eventually, you know, one of them's going to win. So, you know, one of the things I will tell people is, you know, the telltale sign to try to find out, is this a real person or is this just a fake thing being, you know, where you're being hustled is, do you see the person on video? You know, are they giving written analysis with their plays? Because the guys who are creating these fake services, they're just saying, take Houston. They're not actually doing the, you know, it's because it's a very labor intensive job. It takes me, you know, I mean, I'm doing this 18 to 20 hours a day, and it takes me a long time to do the research and then actually to then publish it everywhere as well. So that's one way you could tell if someone's a fake handicapper that's just,
Well, that's interesting, because, as you know, Bobby has been doing, daily fantasy sports content for at least 5 years now, and maybe more. And, I just started doing it in the last couple of years. And that's, for a consumer, sometimes for a consumer, it's very difficult to tell the difference between somebody who actually knows what they're doing and someone who doesn't. And what's sometimes dangerous, and you know this from being a former lawyer and things like that, is what's dangerous sometimes is you can't tell the difference between someone who's a really good content provider and someone who happens to be a really good communicator. Like you have someone who's a tremendous communicator that is really good at disseminating terrible advice, and those are that comes because you've probably seen in your industry a lot of people there. And I just remember this, and I don't want to throw names out, such dynamic personalities out there that when they tell you like, oh my God, you just so want to believe this person because of the way they're communicating, but there might not actually be anything behind the opinion, with the exception of the fact they're able to deliver it in such a dynamic way, right?
Yeah, no, that's true. And I think that's for each person to judge. You have to listen to the person, and you have to say to yourself, and because there's also different styles of handicapping, and there's not necessarily one correct way to do this. I'm a technical and situational handicapper. Dr. Bob is a statistical handicapper. Scott Spreitzer, a fundamental handicapper. And we can go into what all of those different things are.
Yeah. Tell me a little about that, because when I talk about handicapping, and Bobby knows, and as you know, I mean, I must say consider myself, but I'm not a professional, so I don't even know how to characterize myself. But I like to look for spots. I guess that's called situational stuff.
That would be a situational.
Right. Teams coming off of this, I expect a letdown, things like that. Why don't you tell me the difference between those types of handicappers and where you kind of fit in? I imagine it's kind of a combination of them, but where do you fit in? Give me some examples of those types of.
Well, like some people are going to build math models. They'll have various components for that. Some people will then, each player is going to be worth a certain amount of points. If you take out a player, they can, figure that out. Statistical stuff, you're going to be looking at things like yards per rush. And you can go from there. There's various statistics that and each handicapper may value different statistics differently. And you can, emphasize that. Fundamental, you're going to be looking at player matchups. My friend Scott, he's really big into, that's fundamental handicapper. I'm technical and situational. I'm going to be looking at, is this team coming off a straight up and against the spread loss? By how many points is the team coming off? Did they lose by 21 points the previous game? Did they fail to cover the spread? Maybe they're a really good team, but did they fail to cover the spread by 21 or more points? And there's various filters you have, and it's, I'm not going to go into the weeds on it, but that's kind of the difference. Is
there a sport where you feel you have a greater relative edge as opposed
NFL?
To other? You think NFL, huh? And it's so funny because you answered it so quickly. So I guess my follow-up, or even my leading question was, are there sports that are harder?
Baseball.
There it is. Are there sports that are harder to get an edge than others? And it took you a grand total of one blink to say baseball. Why do you think that is, by the way? That you can get an edge in football, but baseball's so hard?
And again, every handicapper is different.
Okay.
You could be talking to us, we could have a guy sitting right next to be Brian Leonard. He could be saying, what's the hardest sport? He'd be saying NFL. What's the easiest sport? He's going to say baseball.
Wow. Because instinctively, I would feel is that the more obscure the sport, the more it would be easy to get an edge if you're willing to put in the work on it. You know what I mean? Like I know people that are like, all they do is bet bet esports or bet like minor league soccer, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Like on that. But the fact that
but there's a lot of people who that's exactly the way it is for a lot of people. It's not the way it is for me. And again, every handicapper is different.
I have a question. Bobby and I have this discussion. Do you feel as though you are best at NFL because you enjoy the sport of NFL more?
No, it has nothing to do with that.
Yeah, that's.
I actually enjoy college basketball probably. Well, I enjoy NFL as well. I'm talking about handicapping, not watching. I enjoy handicapping college basketball a lot. I enjoy handicapping the NFL a lot.
Do you like sports? You like watching sports?
Not anymore. No, I don't watch.
I'm kind of with you.
No, I mean, it's, you get to be our age, and I've got kids, I've got a dog, I've got work. I'm working 18 hours a day. I don't have the time because I'm staring at so it'll be on as background noise, but I'm not watching.
Well, let me ask you this thing. Do you feel as though that you miss something in your analysis by not, watching all the games?
With the way there's a handicapper, there's a lot of handicappers I know who need to watch the games because they're looking at player matchups.
Okay.
I'm looking at numbers. If I'm going to watch a game, that doesn't do anything for me. I know that the Cleveland Cavaliers are covering the spread by 9.27 points per game this year. Watching the game doesn't tell me that. In fact, because of the way I like to do things, I often like to take bad teams and go against good teams. It can poison your mind. If I'm going to watch a game and I'm watching the Atlanta Falcons get beat 32-6, and then the next week I might be like, oh, I can't take this team. They looked like garbage last week. So I don't really want to watch the games because I want to be free to be able to take that team that just got destroyed the previous week without, any kind of thoughts in my mind like this team sucks.
What do you think? Now you're best in NFL, right? So during the course of, let me ask you about bettors in general. Like when the football season ends and then you're getting into basketball and it's basically just basketball and then baseball, do you feel as though that there's I guess it's more of a business question, I guess. Is there a decent amount of action? Is there a decent amount of interest in sports betting for baseball and for basketball?
So if you would stop and think about it, you would realize what's the case. So we actually make as much more money in baseball than we do the NFL. It's 162 games.
Right, that's true.
And the NFL is 17 now. So, you have 10 times the amount of games. Just that alone overpowers the NFL. Now, football is the most popular. Basketball is second. And baseball is the least popular. Well, hockey's the least popular. But the 162 games is still 162 games. Right. And from a business standpoint, one of the mistakes people made in my business for years, I don't think they do it anymore, but for years, a lot of services would be football and basketball services. And they didn't realize that baseball was the bridge from March Madness to preseason football. Well, guys they're going to bet with, they're going to use somebody. So they would leave a service in March. They would find a baseball service. Well, now you have the chance to keep them for football season. The guy who had them in March Madness just lost them.
This is the question that comes from one of our really, really sharp subscribers. And when I told him I was going to be on, he figured I would ask you. I don't think it's really your expertise, but I want to ask it anyway, because these two things have been pretty popular to discuss in sports betting, at least in my industry. And one is the subject of prop betting, and the other is the subject of in-game and live betting. With respect to prop betting, I guess the question is how much time is spent on that, either just handicapping for the sake of handicapping, or using prop lines as kind of a as a benchmark for doing your analysis on the more macro type of things. So I guess I'll break it down. So number one, do you do anything with prop betting? Have you looked into it? Is that
I don't, and it's really a function of time.
Yeah.
I have absolutely no time beyond what I'm already doing. It's people don't understand just how labor intensive this is. So I don't, and I'm not sure I would have the skill set for it anyway.
Gotcha.
Especially since I'm not watching the games. And
yeah.
And as far as live betting or in-game betting, again, from a business standpoint, I can't sell it.
Yep.
So I'm not going to, I'm going to invest my time. I do run my business like a business. So I'm going to invest my time in how to make the business, function.
Yeah. When we talked about our other project, when we brought up inline in-game betting, I can't even imagine how it could even work. I mean, you have to call or communicate to all your customers, like all within like a tiny little time frame, you know? It would be.
I mean, even halftime betting is, you know, more trouble than it's worth. It's just.
Well, you know, it's interesting because I was having a conversation with a mutual friend of ours a week or so ago, and he was mentioning to me that he was interested in betting on, say Tennessee in the basketball. And I know why he was doing it. He was a situational guy, and he was well, you know, I think they're going to be up for the game. It's against an Arizona team that's, you know, undefeated, and you get the home court, you know, whatever. I'm like, well, if you're going to do that, why don't you just bet them in the first half, you know, and pick them in the first half? At least take advantage of your concept that the home team's going to be, that they're going to be all ready to go and you get that adrenaline rush, just in case you're wrong about the actual, you know, the actual game. At least maybe get, and they actually ended up being up like 15 points to half, and we're life and death to hang on.
Yeah, they won by 4. Like I've mentioned it before. No, that's a good friend of mine, Scott Sprecher. That's the kind of stuff he does. He will bet on them in the first half in those type of situations.
Yep.
Okay. How do you feel like COVID and all the scratches and all the differences? I know there's different, you were talking about the different ways of, you know, the people analyze stuff and they assign different point values to different players, but there's so much, and like, especially in the NBA, that, you know, you're finding out whatever, in some cases, a few minutes before game time,
sure,
4 guys are out, not one, you know, it's not one guy, it's a whole different team out. And occasionally, you know, that team still like will show up. I mean, the most obvious example this year, which is, you know, exaggerated, but we had basically the whole Thunder team out the one night, and they lost by the biggest margin in history to Memphis by 73. Then they come back and beat them by 20. But when they had their guys healthy, now, obviously those were a little bit of an outlier results. But how are you dealing with it in relation to this? And like, not just the COVID times, but even the player NBA, you know, in the NBA to get players rested. NFL, you find out not until 90 minutes before lock about whether or not 3 or 4 guys are healthy, until they go through their pregame warmups and all that. How do you deal with that stuff?
Yeah. So again, you know, with respect to COVID, my attitude on it is, you know, for example, the Celtics today are going to be without Jason Tatum, right? So the line was 8.5. I haven't looked at it for a while, but I think maybe the line dropped to 5.5. I'm not sure, but you know, it's announced.
Yeah, that's right.
Is that right? Okay. So, you know, let's say you like Boston 8.5. Okay. Now the line's 5.5. You already put in your bet, you know, you just eat it, right? It's this kind of stuff is completely random. No one has any control over it. No one has any knowledge of what's going to happen. Half the time it's going to help you, and half the time it's going to hurt you. So I go about my business without regard to it, because I know that half the time you're going to get fucked, excuse my language, and half the time you're going to get a great benefit, and it's going to work out 50-50 in the end with that specific issue. So there's nothing you can do about it. And, you know, I was asked actually that question yesterday on a podcast, and they said, well, do you put in another bet? I'm like, no. Like, if you had your bet on, let's just say you had, you know, Minnesota. If you had your bet on, or let's say whatever, Boston. You know, you have either team. Doesn't matter. You don't double up. You don't chase. You just let it go.
Mm-hmm. Did you guys lose me? Or am I back?
You're back. You're good.
Oh, great. So
I mean, I'm curious what you think about that, like as sports bettors.
Well, I mean, for me, I feel as though that the information is either out there, or there's at least a % chance that, you know, that everything's got a % chance of happening. In other words, like if someone is questionable, I think that, let's say that well,
I'm not talking about questionable. I'm talking about an asymptomatic guy who goes in and gets tested and, oh my God, I've got COVID, I'm out, or I was whatever, you know, like I don't think any of these guys have any inkling, you know, before they're getting tested.
Well, you know, it's funny because back when we were, I wonder how much drill down work people do. Because I remember back when Bobby and I were doing DFS during the Black Lives Matter stuff, you know, when teams were starting to consider, you know, like boycotting games and things like that. And we had baseball games where we were actually trying to figure out, okay, which of these teams is more likely to walk off the field than somebody else, you know. We were like, well, we thought Jaylen Brown was going to be, he was much more liberal than the rest of the Celtics, so maybe they'd be more likely to do whatever. And that's, you know, that's guessing. Like you said, there's a fine line between doing educated guess than straight up guessing. But I remember we were actually talking about that, Bobby. Like we're like,
but it's important. Also, there is some motivating things too that come into it, and we're betting on players more than we are on actual teams, right, which obviously plays a bigger factor. And we're speculating on what's going to happen after the lineup's lock. You know what I mean? So we have to really. It's a little different, I think, doing that for guys like us than it would be if we were betting the game straight out, right?
Yeah,
that's the way I would think about it.
So this is what, again, this is what my vision is for everybody out there. I mean,
I also want to just, circle back just to wrap up that question. Again, when you're running the business, you have to put out the play. Clients are paying for convenience.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So they want the games in the morning, so I'm putting out the games at 8 a.m. I don't have the luxury of waiting until 15 minutes before game time to get clarity on the players.
Right.
So, there's, again, you're hamstrung by it, but it is what it is. And it's just part of the landscape right now. So, you put in your bets and you move on.
Mm-hmm. So this was my vision, right? For how you might be able to help true DFS people out. A couple of things. Number one, it's possible, guys, everybody out there, that we might have Al do like a video on a daily basis or a second every couple of days or whatever it is, at least through the end of football season, where he gives his picks, he gives a pick out or something like that. Maybe we'll have Bobby in on that. Maybe we'll just have our tech guy show Al how to do the video on his own or whatever it is. And then also we have a Discord channel that we just set up within our daily fantasy stuff, and we called it Sports Betting. Maybe Al from time to time just pop his head in there and see if anybody had any questions or something like that. But I do want to say, I mean, in the name of true transparency, and this is what I like to do. I mean, honestly, the reason why this would be a developing relationship with Al is that look, he is a businessman, and he doesn't do this for fun. He does this for money. And I don't know how much of his business is based on his own bets versus his business, but his business has got to be more important. So what the idea is that if you guys, take Al's picks and goes to his site and are serious about it and pay him for picks, I mean, that's going to be more likely that he continues to. And that's honestly, that's just want to be upfront with you guys. That's the bottom line here. He's not doing this as a favor for me. He's doing this because it would be good. It would be good for him. I'm doing this for you guys because I think it'd be educational to have as much information on the site as possible. But honestly, if you guys are serious sports bettors, that's what's expected. That if you appreciate Al's takes, it's to throw him some business. And I'd like to think that, like I said, when I talked about the horse racing stuff, I'm not telling you guys you need to go bet sports. But if you are going to bet sports, I just feel it's kind of silly to not give yourself the best chance. so that's why Al's doing it. I know him a long time. He's a serious guy, and he's not doing it just for funsies. You know what I mean? This is why we're going to get involved in that. And so hopefully it works out. Hopefully, he gives you guys some good info. Hopefully, you guys have some questions for him that he can answer from time to time. And hopefully, from a true DFS perspective, we give you insight into, to just expanding our content anymore. Some more. You want to give everybody just kind of direction on how to get to the site and all that stuff.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Maybe give some out. You want to give like a bowl pick or something on Monday night, whatever you think is worth giving out.
Sure. Well, it's easy to get to my site. It's bigal.com. And if you go to the site, you'll see we have the standard offer for people who register for the first time. We give $90 of coupons, but those coupons all require a purchase. So you can get $60 off a $90 purchase. You can get $15 off a $30 purchase. But what I'm doing for true DFS is we're going to give you a fourth coupon, which is no strings attached. Just enter in the promo code box True DFS, and you'll get a $30 coupon, which will give you basically one pick for free. So no strings attached, nothing to purchase. So anyone who's interested, just go to bigal.com. But even better, every day at the website, we've got 20 handicappers. It's not just myself, and you'll see different guys with different styles. We have about, between 5 and 10 free picks every day. And you can just click on free picks if you want to surf around the website. It's probably one of the 5 best sports gambling websites that sells picks in the country.
Awesome. Yeah, guys, I would encourage everybody to check it out. And I think that sounds really good. And I mean, I did want to ask a couple of other quick things if you have another 2 minutes. I wanted to, one of the other things that we were talking about, I didn't know if you guys do anything with season long bets. And I know I was curious if that's covered at all on your site, because I know that we have, that's the one thing I get pretty heavy into, especially with NBA, and I've done really well in the past, that is the season long bets. I didn't know if that's anything you guys cover or not.
Well, I've got 20 handicappers. Some handicappers do that. One of the things I do, and I've had a tremendous success with it, is, and I give it out for free, is I give out my futures bets. Which team is going to win the NFL Super Bowl, which team is going to win the NBA championship. I've hit, people can go there to look, but the last several years I had Virginia at 22-1. I had Baylor last year at 12-1, and all this stuff is given out for free. What else did I have? I had the Dodgers at 4-1. I had the Nationals at 18-1. I hit those two. Wow. My current ones that are ongoing, I've got Gonzaga at 7-1. I've got the Baltimore Ravens at 16-1. They're on life support right now. And I've got the Brooklyn Nets at plus, I forget what it was. Was it plus 350? I forget. Maybe plus 250. Anyway, so I give out those for free. If you go to bigowl.com, you click on my homepage, you'll see all the articles and you'll see that kind of stuff. But at the start of the season, handicappers can sell season long stuff. So you might see, for example, Ben Burns sell, his season long prop bet on, season wins, which team, and he'll sell it for $30, for example. And some other guys will do what I do, and they'll just give it out for free on the articles. We've got lots of articles that are written. We've got game previews on, I think we have about 19 game previews written every day. So if someone just wants to, it's not from myself, it's from my staff. They'll write up the, Saints Dolphins game, for example. So there's a wealth of information on the site.
And just to speak to some of our users, I think that's really beneficial, those write-ups for DFS purposes as well. You're covering a lot of stuff that actually relates to things that we're doing in terms of daily fantasy by accident, just because you're explaining that sort of the way the game will play, especially as it comes to football and basketball, like the way that, the flow of the game matters so much on how things are going to happen. Those full write-ups can actually be beneficial for DFS purposes. So I would encourage people to check it out and think with that head as they read it as well. No, but thanks. That's most of the questions that I had, but I really appreciate you coming on here, and it's great to talk to you.
No, thanks, Bobby. Thanks, Eric.
No problem. Well, listen, check out his site, and we'll continue to develop this as we go. And you got anything for us? What do you got?
Well, I can look at the, I'm officially passing on the game tonight between the Saints and the Dolphins, but the most interesting thing to me is what New Orleans has done on defense. Its last two games, it's held its previous two opponents to 0, when they shut out the Tampa Bay Bucks 9-0, and then their previous opponent, they held to 9 points. So they've given up very few points over the last two games. The knee-jerk reaction might be to look at a low-scoring game here. You've seen the number come down. It's down to, 37.5 points or so. But when you take a look at what NFL teams have done over the past, several years, when they've given up so few points on defense, if they've given up, for example, 10 or less points over the previous two games, they tend to go over the total. I think it's 87 and 68 to the over, provided the line's 35 points or more. So I'd look for a bounce tonight. It's not a super strong play by any stretch. I passed on the game, but if I had to play the game, I would play the over.
Sounds good to me.
Like it. All right. Thanks a lot, man.
Okay, thanks, guys.
Okay, Al, I'll provide you the link so you can check this out as well. I hope you guys learned something. Hope this turns into something good. Good luck, everybody, and we'll catch up soon. For Bobby, for Al, this is Sheets signing off.